Hey everybody, taking a quick break from editing the new Axis of Empires album to do this video. I want to do it very quickly because I still want to get my Halloween movie in, and that's going to be The Devil's Backbone, though I've never seen it, and I need to, and I'm excited about it. Anyway, so I just watched, as I'm sitting here working, I just watched this video by Matt Walsh called "There's an Undeniable Link Between SSRIs and Mass Shootings." In the actual video, he does not provide an undeniable link between SSRIs and serotonin, which, well, I'll get into what all that means in a minute, but he does not provide an undeniable link between SSRIs and mass shootings. Instead, he provides what is, at best, a correlation-causation fallacy, and then tries to explain it away by acknowledging that it may be a correlation-causation fallacy and saying, well, more research is needed. Saying more research is needed is just the absolute apex of lazy reporting and lazy argumentation. Don't put out a title that says there is an undeniable link and then chalk up your position to a self-admitted possible correlation causation fallacy and more research is needed. This is unbelievably weak argumentation from someone who claims to be on the vanguard of the culture war. Anyway, now, those who know me will know and follow the channel will know there are certain things where I agree with someone like Matt Walsh and certain things where I don't. For example, I do agree that it is inappropriate to use puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and gender-affirming surgeries to treat what are more likely manifestations of things like autism spectrum disorders. Chloe Cole being an example, the horrible things that happened to Chloe Cole being a wonderful example of that. Now, before you grab a rope, bear with me, I'm going to swing back into what I'm here to criticize Matt Walsh for. So he's trying to argue that there's a link between SSRIs and mass shootings. SSRIs are essentially antidepressants. And a number of people take them for a number of reasons, and he's trying to make this very, very, very weak case that that there's a very concerning correlation, and the reason he makes this correlation is because so many of the people who commit these mass shootings were on antidepressants, SSRIs, and other psychoactive medication. Okay, there's just one problem, and that is that for the numbers to for this to be a direct correlation, one, there would have to be some actual scientific consensus, not just people saying in a news report like what a BBC news report that, oh, I took these medications and had these side effects. There needs to be an actual compendium of data and knowledge on this subject. For example, we know that there is a direct correlation between smoking and the development of lung cancer. Roughly 1 in every 4 people who smokes will develop lung cancer. Now, by contrast, I did some research, and the federal government estimates that there's about 1 in 10 Americans is on some form of an antidepressant, SSRIs. They think that that 1 in 10 people is on one of these medications. So that works out to about 36 million people. Now, in 2022, for example, there were 647 mass shootings. Now, that is 647 too many, but 600, and that is an extraordinarily high number for mass shootings. But if we are to tie that into the larger number of people that are on these medications, it's not even, it barely even registers. It's not even 1%. It's not even a decimal point of 1%. It is a vanishingly small number compared to the number of people that are actually on these medications. And the thing is, for all of his talk, Matt Walsh doesn't say very much about what SSRIs are and what they're supposed to do. So I'm going to explain this. I am a user of SSRIs, of prescribed SSRIs, and I am But I am not a medical professional, and if any medical professional would like to chime in and either correct me or more properly or fully elaborate on the things I'm saying, that would be great. But what I can tell you is what was explained to me about how SSRIs work. So, SSRI stands for serotonin reuptake inhibitor, and essentially selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And what that does is, what happens is, a lot of mental health disorders with autism spectrum disorders, which is what I deal with being an example, a lot of these issues owe to an overabundance of serotonin. Now you would think, well, serotonin is what makes you feel happy. Why would you want to, wouldn't it be good to have too much serotonin or lots of serotonin? Well, not exactly. Because what happens is your brain secretes serotonin, creates serotonin, and then there are parts of your brain that are supposed to absorb that serotonin. And what happens is if you have too much serotonin, you have more serotonin than your brain can process, and that excess serotonin starts going into places that it was never, starts overflowing into places that it was never supposed to go. And so consequently, you are mentally overstimulated as a result. And so that is what SSRIs are meant to correct. And so Matt Walsh is wrong when he says, we don't know what these drugs do or what they're supposed to do, blah, blah, blah. No, we do. We know what they're supposed to do. He's getting way out of hand with this, or he's grossly misrepresenting what's going on here. So, and he says, all of this is the pharmaceutical companies, blah, 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 Take a minute. I have a family member that is a former psychiatrist who, when I went on SSRIs in my early 20s, actually in my 20th year, when I went on SSRIs, was able to give me good insights and information about this. Someone who was not actively working as a psychoanalyst, would not have been on the take from Big Pharma or anything like that, was able to give me realistic and good information about what was going on, as were a number of other mental health professionals. Now, yes, there are doctors out there that are agenda driven. There are doctors out there that are glorified bartenders. But the thing is that those things certainly apply to issues that are ideologically charged. But just the general treatment, I mentioned the whole overabundance of trans diagnoses and everything earlier. Those things are very ideologically sensitive issues, and however you feel about them, you can't deny that. Versus just the everyday treatment of mental health is not supposed to be an ideologically sensitive issue. Again, I say that there's other examples of it. Ritalin, there's a huge overabundance of Ritalin prescriptions. We have an opioid crisis in this country. I'm not denying that. But I want to talk about what these medications are meant to do. So for me, I was, obviously I've been autistic my whole life, but in dealing with that, coming back to why would you want to lower and regulate the amount of serotonin that you're getting in your brain? Why would that, and why would limiting the amount of the chemical that makes you happy help treat things like anxiety and depression? So, being autistic, one of the issues that you deal with is sensory overstimulation. For example, I started having these experiences when I was very young, and I have very significant memories of times when they were very debilitating. For example, there was a time when I was 11 years old, excuse me, and my dad and I were going to see a movie at Phipps Plaza, which is an upscale shopping mall in the Buckhead part of Atlanta. And before we went in to see the movie, we had lunch at Johnny Rockets, which is a burger joint, and a famous burger joint. And all of a sudden, as I was, I finished my meal and everything, everything was fine. And then all of a sudden I was getting overpowered with too much existence, if that makes sense. It was like the volume of existence got turned up too loud, as if the ambient space right here around me that's like occupied by nothing but oxygen, it's as if this space, this invisible space was suddenly expanding upon me like it was crushing me. And all of the music suddenly seemed not too loud, but almost distorted in a way. I was hyper aware of everything around me, and all of the ambient sounds seemed like they were just going together into one big crushing vacuum of or one big crushing smorgasbord of noise, and it was just overpowering. I thought I was going to be sick. I thought I was going to throw up. And we left. We didn't even see the movie. We left and went home. And that's one example of memories like that that I had. Now, what I didn't understand was, one, I didn't know I was autistic at the time, and things like shopping malls are usually, and big, loud, echoing rooms like that are usually, or chambers like that, are usually very difficult for autistics. And then there was another thing I didn't know, which was the food I had just eaten was a contributing factor in that, because really greasy food like that, the burger and everything, now, not every burger is eaten in a loud shopping mall kind of space and everything, but but what I didn't know is when you I ate that burger, and all the grease and the sugar, of course, gets you a little agitated anyway, gets you a little edgy, and then all of the grease in your, in your throat and things like that. I didn't know this at the time, but your digestive tract is like a second nervous system. And so if it gets improperly stimulated, like eating a lot of greasy food that, coats the trachea and the digestive tract, if that's the right word for it, the pipe that goes down this way to the stomach. And I can't think of anatomy right now. Anyway, if that gets overstimulated with something like a lot of greasy food, that can actually contribute to a sudden spike in sensory stimulation issues if you're someone like me that's autistic. I didn't know any of this at the time. I wouldn't learn about all of this until about a decade later when I was in college. But that's the kind of thing that an SSRI is intended to treat. And if you are, the people who do, the people who do these mass shootings, the derogatory term to describe a lot of these people would be unhinged. And where that comes from is a layman's approximation of what they see outwardly from somebody that's suffering from too much sensory input and too much sensory stimulation. I give the example of, it's like, imagine you're listening to a radio or a stereo that's turned up so loudly that the actual music is distorted. It just sounds like a wall of sound. What the SSRI does is, in effect, it's turning the radio, the stereo, down to a point that you can now hear the music and appreciate the music because it's coming to you at an appropriate volume. So I bring this up to say Matt Walsh's fomenting of moral panic about this is way, way, way out of proportion with the very mundane and very reasonable reasons that a lot of people use SSRIs. So I take one medication and that's it. I actually take a relatively low dose of it because there are certain side effects that I get that I want to avoid or minimize. And so I take the lowest dose that I can take and still get the effect of it that I need. And I just try to use, mindfulness and calming techniques and everything to put aside the anxiety that arises and stuff like that, which I've gotten better at over the years. But anyway, so the thing is, though, what he's pushing here, this moral panic about SSRIs being possibly some kind of contributing factor in mass shootings and things like that, it's not new. Matt Walsh and I both grew up in the era of Columbine and Jonesboro and, Kip Kinkle and all of these other people that he mentioned, the shooters that he mentioned. And he should have the intellectual honesty to know full well, to admit full well that these discussions were happening back then too. This was a conservative talking point back then, 20 plus years ago. It has been an ongoing thing. You know, and you might see in this video, you see all those twitches that I do, and you might say, is that being controlled by the SSRIs? Yes, it is. It's being controlled by the SSRIs, so I'm not sitting here doing this or doing this while I'm trying to talk to you. The self-soothing techniques and all of that. And so, anyway, bringing it back around, the reason I bring that up is because when I was in college and I was in the care of mental health professionals that I've been referred to by my school and that kind of thing, talking to them. I was not diagnosed by them. I was diagnosed at a place in Alabama while I was home for Christmas break one year, or that year. But anyway, while I was talking to the doctors that were going to give me the prescriptions for the prescription that I needed to go on SSRIs, I was talking to these people, and I had the same concerns. I said, well, there's these things about like mass shooters are on these medications, and what if that's causing it, et cetera, et cetera. And they calmed me down and they said, these medications cannot make you do anything you are not already inclined to do. The people who are on these medications who go on to become mass shooters and things like that were already of the disposition to go be mass shooters. They were all, it is not a Jekyll and Hyde issue. It's not that you are Dr. Jekyll and take the medication and turn into Dr. Hyde. It's that the medication, it is that the wrong medication or the wrong dosage of medication has the potential to exacerbate existing Hyde-like symptoms. And I'm summarizing what they said to me with the Jekyll and Hyde metaphor. To exacerbate existing Hyde-like problems. So yes, you will have situations where doctors prescribe the wrong medication, they do it badly. Doctors are human beings, they are prone to error, they are prone to, again, yes, being agenda-driven, being on the take from pharmaceutical companies and a whole host of other things. But again, there is the potential for human error. And it is possible that the wrong medication given to the wrong person can cause, as he mentioned with the side effects, more agitation, more irritability, things like that. But it cannot give a previously stable, non-violent person the inclination to become violent. It won't do that. And so and they were just, everyone I talked to, and I was so careful about it. And it took me a couple months before I was, a couple months between being told I needed the medication to actually taking it. But I was very concerned about that. And I did a lot of talking to medical professionals and a lot of research. And they were very adamant that no, SSRIs do not have the potential to make you do something that you would not already have a disposition towards doing. And so that is ultimately what it comes down to. And so all of that, all of that is to say that, again, I could also be wrong. Like I said, I'm not a final authority on it. I'm giving you what was explained to me by people who thought I needed to be on this medication. But what Matt Walsh is pushing here, this argument that he is pushing, this is on the level of suggesting that vaccines are trying to blame vaccines for autism and that kind of thing. It's on that level. And it's very concerning because the Daily Wire is more and more on an absolute crusade against the mentally ill. Pardon me. And I'm even willing, even with the Daily Wire, I'm willing to give credit where credit's due. I will acknowledge when they say something I agree with and something I think they're right about. But this agenda that they're pushing, where you have you have Michael Knowles laughing maliciously and mocking the mentally ill and calling to bring back insane asylums, and Candace Owens doing the same thing. They both have this unbridled hatred. Candace Owens especially, they have this unbridled hatred of the mentally ill, and bigotry and prejudice towards the mentally ill that is unconscionable. And when they say they want to bring back insane asylums, and they describe how they want mentally ill people to be treated, they really do want a return to the times when mentally ill people were treated like, basically treated like, or I should say, non-functioning mentally ill people, because most mentally ill people just go about their day. But they want to return to the time when non-functioning mentally ill people were just treated like animals. They really do want to bring that back. They really do have a hatred, an unconscionable hatred and bigotry for the mentally ill. And for that reason, it's very important to me that we counteract bad information with good information. I also want to close by saying that I love how the Daily Wire is very, 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 and the Daily Wire and conservative pundits in general are very, 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 very selective when it comes to who they do and don't label mentally ill. For example, apparently we're never supposed to have any dialogue about the mental health of George Zimmerman. George Zimmerman, who killed Trayvon Martin. We're apparently supposed to talk ad nauseum at length about all of the juvenile delinquency behavior that Trayvon Martin exhibited, as if George Zimmerman somehow had some kind of foreknowledge of that, and as if that somehow justified what happened. We're supposed to talk about that, but we're never supposed to talk about George Zimmerman's background. George Zimmerman, who had a very extensive and well-documented history of rage control issues, to such a degree that he assaulted a police officer and was forced to undergo court-ordered anger management sessions. We're never supposed to talk about that. We're never supposed to talk about George Zimmerman's mental state when he stalked Trayvon Martin down a dark road and got in an altercation that ultimately resulted in him shooting Trayvon Martin to death. And of course, of course, we're supposed to always go along with Trayvon Martin being the one who assaulted Zimmerman first. Never mind that the only person who was there to comment on that, or that is still alive, is George Zimmerman himself. But anyway, we're never supposed to consider the mental health of people like that. But similarly, we're never supposed to consider the mental health of people like Daniel Penny. Daniel Penny, who is a former Marine and therefore very, very, therefore, it's, I can't think right now. He is a former Marine. I'm going to stop trying to put everything in the tone of sarcasm. He's a former Marine, so it's entirely possible that he has issues with post-traumatic stress disorder, other issues that could be exacerbated by by military service and that kind of thing. We're never supposed to we're never supposed to think about the fact that Daniel Penny is able to sit there and talk about killing this person with a look of detached calm that indicates he has absolutely no remorse or regret about the situation whatsoever. He doesn't seem at all fazed about ending the life of another human being. We're not supposed to talk about any of that. We're only supposed to consider him a hero because the Daily Wire has decided to treat unilaterally applaud vigilante killers when it serves their narrative. Anyway, that's the thing. People are the idea. I am all for doing all kinds of studies and rigorous safety screenings and everything for these medications. But my God, man, if there were a noticeable one-to-one connection, or if there were not one-to-one, but if there were a notable connection between the use of these drugs and people committing mass shootings, we would be seeing, we could expect to see a negative blowback in the millions of people, not in the hundreds. So anyway, my observation for the day, and oh, I wanted to get my editing done, but I also want to watch the Devil's Backbone. So we'll see.